Good afternoon. It is Wednesday, May the 14th, 2025, and this is the first episode of Season 3 of my Tropical Weather Update series here on the YouTube channel. So I am very proud to present you all my first episode in the Tropical Weather Update department. Now, to start off the video, here's a look at the very latest GOES 19 True Color Visible Satellite Imagery provided by Dr. Levi Cowan at tropicaltidbits.com. There will be a link in the description below this video leading to his website where you can view these satellite images 100% for free. Go check it out after this video. So as we do take a look now at the imagery, we do have an area of disturbed weather down here located roughly at 50 degrees west in longitude by 10 to 15 degrees north in latitude. And this is going to be the area of disturbed weather that's eventually going to be moving over these islands of the Windwards, Leeward Islands, including for Puerto Rico, as well as the Dominican Republic, bringing enhanced moisture to the area. Now, while we are not expected to see anything developing off of this, though, we are nonetheless going to see quite a bit of heavy rainfall and maybe some flood concerns over the next several days, especially beginning on Saturday and Sunday and lasting through much of next week, because our trade winds here are going to relax some. And anytime we get relaxed trade winds through here, we end up getting some lift in the atmosphere. Now, when we take a look at our latest GFS model, this stands for the Global Forecasting System. This is the American model version of a weather forecast that we like to look at when we look at the tropics. And the green areas here indicate where it's raining, where we have thunderstorms, where we have some lift in the atmosphere. And as we go forward in the next 36 hours, this plume of moisture is eventually going to get established over here in portions of the Dominican Republic as well as Puerto Rico. That includes for portions of, say, if you are on Barbados, some of these other small islands down here, you're going to get an enhanced amount of showers and thunderstorms with some of those trade winds as that high remains to your northeast. Now, putting this into motion, we can see those showers and thunderstorms are going to increase. That plume of moisture is going to really get established here over Puerto Rico, over the U.S. British Virgin Islands, if you are on, say, Martinique, as well as if you are on Guadeloupe, those islands here. Just keep that in mind. St. Kitts and Nevis, you're going to get some enhanced showers and thunderstorms out of this. But again, nothing too extreme. We're not talking about a tropical storm or a hurricane here. It's way too early for that. We'll get into the climatological side of things here towards the second half of this premiere. But we can see here that's where we're going to have a lot of rainfall. Pretty enhanced, right? If you're a fisherman, just keep that in mind. And this is going to hang around for quite some time. So enhancement of rainfall, because our trade winds here are just going to slow down. And that's going to be a concern of how much warmer the Caribbean is going to be able to warm up over the next week or so. Any more warming that we can get is only more trouble down the road once we get into the peak of hurricane season, if that makes sense. So this is for Wednesday, May the 21st, and yep, you're still continuing with enhancement of showers and thunderstorms here. Some of these storms could contain some pea-sized hail, some of the strongest, most intense thunderstorms. And so if the ice is able to make it all the way down to the surface, you might have a few pieces of hail falling in your area, but probably not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. But you never know. You never know. So enhancement of rainfall there for Wednesday next week, and this is going to continue. Look at it, just doesn't go away. More enhancement of showers and thunderstorms in this area thanks to some lift. But then after that, once we get beyond the 10-day forecast, by the late part of May, things should settle down here for a while. Okay, that's what the model is showing. Now we're going to zoom out and look at the bigger picture here, and this is a 3-plot system. This is what I like to use in my tropical weather updates throughout the hurricane season. This is the 850 millibar layer, so we're looking at 5,000 feet above the surface, and the plot system marked here is these height contours. So see these black lines here that I've highlighted here in black? See this? Right here, I'm outlining this, actually not really highlighting. Okay, these are height contours. So this is where we have higher pressure at in the low levels of the atmosphere. This is where we have areas of low pressure here in the North Atlantic. So we could look at this chart and decipher that, okay, we have a ridge down here across the subtropics. So that includes for Bermuda. This includes for the Azores. Well, Azores Islands are here, but close enough. So we have a good sized ridge here that is anchored across the subtropics of the Atlantic, and this tells us that, okay, the steering flow to the south of this is generally eastward. So if we get any tropical wave that comes off of Africa, it's going to likely track generally westward, right? But because of poleward flow and because of the Coriolis effect, usually systems that develop, unless they're very shallow, tend to gain latitude like this. Okay, so the stronger the system in general, it wants to gain latitude and turn north sooner rather than later. That's why we always watch these things when they come off of Africa, because if they get far enough west, yep, that's the Caribbean. That's where a lot of us live, including the East Coast here of the United States and the Gulf of America, where a lot of people live, like Louisiana, Mississippi, if you're in Texas, Florida, if you're in Alabama, yep. That includes you too. So we got to watch these things, right? And then secondly, the color coat or the color shading is how much spin there is in the atmosphere. So the more spin you have, especially if it's very concentrated and if it's a ball of energy, think about that, a ball of energy, very tightly wound up. We usually look at that as, oh, it's a tropical storm or it's a hurricane or it's a tropical depression, right? That's what I like to use. That's why I like to use this very much, because you could see this on a 3-plot system. The heights, the vorticity, how much spin there is in the atmosphere, and lastly, these wind flags, or these flags basically tell us how strong the wind is, or how strong the wind is, and which way is it blowing from, if that makes sense. So down here, we have an easterly low-level jet at around 25 knots. How do I know? Because our wind barbs are like this. So this is what we have right here. Okay, so this tells us easterly wind here. We have northeasterly wind here. We have very little loose wind here. And then we have southerly wind here. So this kind of gives us an idea that, okay, the circulation is in this kind of sense. This is where we have our ridge. Okay, so enough with the jibber jabbering here and discussing things. Let's put this into motion and let's see how things evolve. So by Sunday, there is this loose area of low pressure. Again, it's nothing to be concerned about right now. Other YouTubers or other people out there will probably make a bigger deal out of this. In my sense, I'm not worried about it at all because this is very broad. And you can see this by our wind barb. See how the winds do this and they kind of curl back like that. This is a very broad area of low pressure. It's a very large wave envelope. Nothing is able to consolidate within a envelope like this. It needs to be a lot tighter, more concentrated to generate thunderstorms to get an area of low pressure to form. However, we do have an area of spin here as noted on the vorticity plot, but that's probably more likely an overstatement by the GFS model. GFS model will take something little and blow it up for no reason, right? And that's why we have to use this model with a lot of caution. Now going forward into early next week, you can see that area of low pressure just kind of sits down here. You can see the spin, some of the vorticity, the color shading there, more yellows, more oranges. Right now, again, it's 7 days out. I don't see anything with this that alerts me that, oh, this is going to develop. If the NHC did want to, they could probably put a 0% chance on this. I don't think it's going to happen. I really don't. There's very little way in the form of development with that. The ridge, however, though, is well to the northeast of it, so there's really weak steering currents here underneath these two ridges, as you can see here on the model. And as we go forward into day 10, which is the furthest I really go out in time, but for the sake of this first episode, we will go all the way out to the very end of the GFS model run. And what we can see here for Saturday morning, May 24th, big sprawling ridge of high pressure. How do I know that? Because of our height contours, really higher heights here, lower heights down here, and you have this nice, good, smooth trade wind flow coming off of Africa, which is suppressing any development. That's why I'm not concerned about this. But as we get later in the season, we watch for these areas of spin coming off of the Sahel region of Africa, moving over the Cabo Verde Islands, and when they track this way, or sometimes this way, they get in the way. We got to really watch it then, like we did with Beryl. Remember, Beryl came off of Africa as a robust wave, and then it was able to develop into one of the earliest Cat 5 hurricanes ever on record. Now, going forward, all the way out to the end of the run, nothing. There's just nothing at this given time. Now, on this run, it's not showing anything, but that doesn't mean that, there's not going to be anything by the end of May, David. Don't worry about it. All right, let's move on and let's talk about the deep layer moisture plot, because I will be using this quite frequently in my routine weather tropical weather discussions. So what we have here is this turquoise shading. This is a lot of moisture in the atmosphere. So we're looking at 10,000 feet above the surface, all the way up to about 30,000 feet above the surface. So that's the column of the atmosphere that we're looking at. And this is an average moisture plot through the deep layer. And so when you see these green shading areas, there's a lot of moisture, and that's where we have convection. That's why you saw on the model, we have a lot of thunderstorm development expected. That really matches with this. You can see all the clouds there, and this is basically what we have now. It all makes sense, right? Brown shading is drier air. So the air is really dry in the deep layer, and that's not favorable for any tropical cyclones, right? Makes all sense. Things connect really well. So as we go to day 5, right? 5 days out, look at this moisture plume right here. You could really see the outline. That is why a lot of areas here in the Windward and Leeward Islands, including for Puerto Rico, you're going to get slammed with a lot of rain through the weekend into early next week, in the middle of next week, and the end of next week, of course, because this is going to hang around for several days. Look, it's just not going anywhere. This is Wednesday. This is Thursday. And again, this is just going to hang around at least through Thursday or Friday next week. And you can see it right here. All that moisture. Here is the Dominican Republic. Here is Puerto Rico right here. And here are some of the northern Leeward Islands, if that makes sense. Actually, yeah, those are Leewards, and these are Windwards down here. And then we got another little weak plume of moisture coming off of Africa. And again, this is the time of the year that we really are not concerned about Cape Verde season. We look more in this area for any tropical development. Okay, early in the season. So by late May, early June, mid-June, late June, this is the area that we are going to be more interested in, right down here. Okay, oops, I even make my arrow very good there. Instead, I made a little slingshot, right? But nonetheless, that's what we look for. Another product that I like to use here is the wind shear forecast. And as we go forward here, gotta move on here 9 minutes into the video, you can see this is what we have right here. Okay, the wind shear is also not conducive. That's why I don't think anything is going to form. Now, if anything were ordered to form, it would form down here by the middle of next week, because the shear under diffluence aloft, the shear is generally light, about, say, 10 or 15 knots. Now, what does the European model have to say all about the probability of a tropical storm passing within 300 kilometers in a radius? So the lower the chances, so in other words, there's only a small 5 here. That's likely due to an extratropical cyclone that we're not concerned about at all unless you're shipping interest. Then, yeah, there's a non-zero chance here, but who cares? It's only a 5 to 10% chance. As we go further out in time, this is through the next 3 to 4 weeks, so through early June. This is what we're looking at, and there is a very slim chance all throughout the Gulf of America into the Western Atlantic where there's a 5 to 10% chance of an area of interest, but that's very low chance. That's very low. There's no signal that really concerns me yet that we're going to get any tropical development. And even down here, I I don't know why the Leeward and Windward Islands are not showing up on this map, but Puerto Rico is, fortunately, so we're able to show you that. But all the islands down here basically are not under the gun, with no tropical development for the foreseeable future, other than, again, that area of interest that we did mention with a lot of rainfall over the next 7 days. Even the spaghetti plot over the next 8.5 to 10 days, not showing anything in the way of tropical development. So good news here, and a lot of you are probably looking at this at, oh, there's a lot of spaghetti plots down there in Venezuela. Okay, that's because of vorticity. These mountains do something weird where you can get vorticity that spins up along this trade wind front, I call it, where we get westerly and westerly winds here, where we get easterly winds up here, and so you end up getting a lot of vorticity. So the model mistakes that as in, oh, there might be a weak tropical depression. No, I'm not concerned about it. That's just, I would say it's artificially, it is not realistic. It really isn't. And the models do that all the time. Now, here's a look at the very latest sea surface temperatures here, courtesy of cyclonicwx.com. And this is as of May 12th. So this is delayed by a couple of days, but pretty much current, right? Things don't change very much in sea surface temperature department standpoint over the couple of days. And so we can see where the 80-degree isotherm actually already is. So this is moving north pretty quickly, and we have had some pretty substantial warming that has taken place in this general area here of the Caribbean, as well as the Western Main Development Region over the last couple of weeks, including the Gulf of America that has seen some pretty nice warming as well. Although the northern Gulf of America off the coast of Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, and portions there or most of Florida, we have had sea surface temperatures there cool off a little bit due to some cold frontal passages over the northern Gulf that have allowed sea surface temperatures to cool just a little bit. And that's a good thing because we were very far above average up here in the northern Gulf just literally a week ago. Now sea surface temperatures up there are nearly average, with still very far above average sea surface temperatures across most, if not all, of the Caribbean, as well as the western and southwestern Atlantic. So really, really warm sea surface temperatures here. Still that cold pool where we're seeing below average sea surface temperatures, but nothing too significantly. And I mean only 0.2 of a degree below average, which is certainly not above average. That's a good thing. But it's also not substantially below average. So it's not like that, oh, this is going to cancel our hurricane season, David. We're not going to see a very busy season at all just because, oh, we are seeing this cold patch of water. Remember, this is May the 12th, okay? We are in the middle of May. We still have just about 2 weeks left before the official start of the Atlantic hurricane season, which is, again, is June 1st. And really, the peak of the hurricane season doesn't even arrive until the 10th of September. Okay, so we literally have 4 months. We literally have 4 months before the peak of hurricane season. And between now and 4 months, things will warm up significantly. And I still believe this whole area out here will have well above average sea surface temperatures, especially once we get into late July into August and September. Now, what does the average look like on a 15-day running mean average? All right, so this is basically looking at the last 2 weeks and averaging things out. And overall, even so we have had a recent little dip in sea surface temperature anomalies in recent days and this looks to be over the Atlantic Main Development Region, the overall average is still going up. All right, so don't look at it and think that, oh, we have had some cooling in recent couple of days. That doesn't really speak the longer picture. We are still climbing up here on average. And right now, we're running at about 0.25 degrees Celsius above the long-term average. So when you round this up, we're running almost 0.3 of a degree or around 0.3 of a degree above average. When you look at the Caribbean, we are running around 0.63 degrees above average. I almost said percent, or did I? You can see here. We had a peak here back in early March. That was crazy, right? We had an average of almost a degree Celsius. We cooled it down all the way down to here, and now we're back up. See what I mean? The fact that we're warming up already and we're not even in the peak of hurricane season, I could only imagine what this is going to do in months to come. Does this continue to go up, or does it continue to kind of level off or get down to near average? We shall see, right? Be my guest. Now, looking at the Gulf of America here, I know it says Gulf of Mexico. I don't think they realized of the name change, but it's Gulf of America. I know for a fact because people have commented me on it in my recent tropical video saying, oh, David, it's the Gulf of America now. So we're just going to stick with your gut and say it is the Gulf of America. And right now, it is running at around about almost 0.7 degrees Celsius above average. This has been a really warm basin where we did breach back in mid-February up to 1.3 to almost 1.4 Celsius above average. Man, imagining if that right here was over here, imagining that, we'd probably be pretty concerned by this point, right? That would not be good. That would not be good at all. But still, we are running well above average nonetheless. We're not down here where it's normal. We're well above average. Another tool that I wanted to show you all is the upper ocean heat content right now. This is a more detailed version than the previous version that I used to use in last year's season. And this is from the University of Miami. And what this is showing us is how much heat is being stored in the Atlantic, basically below the surface, especially in the Caribbean. So think of the skin of the ocean, right? It's usually in the first, say, 40 or 50 feet, right? That's the skin. But what's happening even deeper is our water temperatures still very warm, right? And that's basically what this is. So the higher the numbers, the more upper ocean heat content you have, which means you have a lot more heat energy being stored like a rubber band beneath the skin of the ocean. So over here near Jamaica, over the Cayman Islands, that's where upper ocean heat content is quite high, but not as high as last year. But over here basically is where our upper ocean heat content, where I've circled in black here like a little kidney bean. I drew a kidney bean, can't believe that. Over the Leeward and Windward Islands, over the Central and Eastern Caribbean is where our upper ocean heat content is slightly higher than last year, only by a little bit, but that just means it's even more far further above average than where it should be for this time of the year. Look at down here, already seen some green colors and even some yellow colors. Yeah, that's pretty crazy, right? And we're even seeing some green colors already start to perk up there just to the southeast of Barbados, which means there's a lot of upper ocean heat content already building. And when we look at the upper ocean heat content anomaly, all these red and orange colors, this is pretty crazy. This is concerning when it comes to tropical formation because that just means more heat energy being stored for another intense hurricane like we saw with Beryl, which 100% the reason why Beryl was able to intensify so quickly is because the upper level pattern was favorable for it and the sea surface temperatures, the upper ocean heat content was so conducive for such an intense hurricane. And Beryl, you all, is a great reminder that we can have intense hurricanes early in the season, just not as early as Beryl. So we could have them happen in July or late June, for all we know, right? But not always in September. Look at last September, right? We were dead for the peak of hurricane season, but yet we saw a lot of activity in the latter part of September into early October. So you got to understand, just because that we don't see anything major like we did last year in late June or early July, does not mean we won't see anything major at all. We got to understand Beryl was a very big anomaly. And that leads us into this map or this diagram, however you want to call it, Hofmolar diagram. So this is showing us where there's upward motion in the atmosphere and where there's sinking motion. Where there's sinking motion, where we have suppression of convection. That's why our trade winds right now are modestly strong, but guess what's coming? Another area of rising motion, but because of climatology, this is not really going to mean anything, all right? I don't think we're going to see any tropical development out of this rising motion part of the MJO and a convective coupled Kelvin wave. Not going to see much actually that convective coupled Kelvin wave is going to contribute to that enhancement of rainfall over the eastern and central Caribbean in the next week or so. And then we have a lot of sinking motion thereafter, all the way through the end of May into early June, like June the 1st. But that's not to say that we might have more upward motion coming back into the basin by the early to the middle of June. And now when we look at the extended version of all of this, again, your dates are later. So this is not latitude by any means, all right? These are time stamps, time series right here in black. And then right here is actually your longitude. These lines going across like this, okay, if that makes sense. So you're looking at kind of a grid point. And so rising motion here through the middle to the end of May, sinking motion here through the very end of May to early June. And then it's this period right in here, folks, right in here. And this is from the ensemble mean over the next 46 days, showing us that we have rising motion moving over the Caribbean and the Atlantic basin by early to mid-June. This is going to be the area that we're going to have to watch in the Atlantic for tropical development. It doesn't mean we will see tropical development, but we look for early signals. All right, this is basically telling you that, okay, we have rising motion, so we know the wind shear is going to back off dramatically for a little bit, right? The upper ocean heat content is there, and it's just a matter of, do we get anything that concentrates, that spins up into a tropical depression, storm, or hurricane? That is to be foreseen once we get closer. Will this rising motion actually develop? Looks like it is, because you can clearly see it all in here, all this rising motion. Right now it's over the Western Pacific as well as Indonesia and the maritime continent. It's going to be moving into the Central Pacific, the Eastern Pacific, and then back over into the Atlantic yet again, where, again, this go around, we might have some tropical development. Last but not certainly least here, this is climatology at work here. So this is a look at the Atlantic hurricane and tropical storm activity based on data from 1944 to 2020. And so this is a weighted average on, do we see a lot of activity in this particular time of the year, or is it very inactive, right? And yeah, look at where we're at. I mean, look at, like, you need to look at this very, very good. We are right here, okay? I mean, we're like barely. I mean, we get maybe 1 or 2 tropical named storms every 100 years. So out of a 100-year period, we typically get at least 1 or 2 named storms during this time of the year. It's how inactive this part of the season really is. Well, we're not even in hurricane season just yet until June 1st. But it's really not until we get to June when things lighten up a little bit more. But it's not really until we get into late August, so the last back half of August into early September is when things go out of control. That's where we get out of 100 years, this is, extrapolated. So if we go back to 1920 to 2020, we kind of roll out a scroll sheet here of 100 years. We typically get 80 to 100 storms. So almost basically on September 10th and the 11th, expect a named storm, all right? Because it happens almost every year. But occasionally we don't get one on that particular day, on that particular part of the year, right? And so like last year, we didn't have anything on the 10th or the 11th, right? But this year we might. So that's why we look at this graph very much, and we will be using this in almost every tropical video possible, because you guys really need to look at this and be like, oh, we're not even in the peak yet. And that brings me to this. All right, this runs from 1851 to 2023. Okay, this was just updated, literally only 2 years old. So this is well up to date at this point in time, which is really nice and helpful. We can see out of 1851 to 2023, there have been only 12 named storms that have occurred. That's a very, very low number. Okay, it might seem like, well, there has been tropical activity, David, between the 11th and the 20th of May. But come on, spread that out. Literally spread that out in almost 200 years. That's not very much at all. That really isn't. And you get 13 named storms over the eastern Pacific, which is not very much at all. Okay, this is through the 20th of May, by the way. So again, we are really, really on the low end of things when it comes to the tropics. And it's really not until we get into, say, August and September when this map looks a lot more busier. Well, that is going to sum it up for today's detailed tropical weather update, episode 1, season 3 here on the YouTube channel for Wednesday, May the 14th, 2025. If you found this video really helpful, detailed, and informative, folks, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. Enable all notifications if you haven't already, because we are going to try my very best here. Luck with have it. We're going to try to upload these videos every single day, like an episode, like a series on the channel, okay? So if you haven't subscribed yet for tropical weather updates in your neck of the woods, please subscribe. It really, really does help out a lot because I will keep you all covered here during the hurricane season coming up here just in about 2 weeks. And I've got a lot of cool things planned. You saw them already on my community posts, folks, with live cameras, live feed. It's just going to be great. It really is. I cannot wait. I just cannot wait to show you all what I have done over the last few weeks here for the YouTube channel when it comes to the tropics. All right. But anyways, thank you all for watching, and I will have another tropical weather update tomorrow, which will be episode 2, season 3 for Thursday, May the 15th. Have a great rest of your day. Talk to you guys tomorrow.